so it's non-repudiatable and sends it electronically from the computer of the UIDI into the computer of the bank. And when the bank receives that, it treats that as a KYC and opens a bank account. So you have basically created an electronic, paperless, real-time, instant system by which you can activate a service which is based on a KYC. Now there are many places where this will be applicable. For example, the Reserve Bank of India has said that Aadhaar is a KYC to open a bank account. The Reserve Bank of India is our central federal, reserve, is the Federal Reserve in the US, or the central bank in the UK. Similarly, the IRDA, which is the regulator for insurance, has declared that Aadhaar is a KYC to buy an insurance policy. SEBI, which is the regulator for stock markets, has said Aadhaar is a KYC to buy a micro mutual fund or a stock transaction. The pension fund regulator has said Aadhaar is a KYC to buy a pension. The oil regulator has said that Aadhaar is a KYC to get an LPG connection. The telecom regulator has said that Aadhaar is a KYC to get a mobile connection. So what is happening here is more and more people are saying that this is a KYC to get access to a particular public service. And as they start using the electronic KYC, you will be able to provide instant services or instant access to services at any point. Now, why is this important? Because if suddenly you're broadening access to service. For example, a bank does not have to have a branch in every village. If they only have an agent in the village, if the agent has an electronic device which can do KYC, then I can walk into that agent, do a KYC and open a bank account on the spot in the village. And therefore it changes the whole dynamic of this game. And therefore, one big class of apps that we see emerging are what think of them as KYC apps. And essentially they'll be used to provide access into a particular application. I can get a bank account, I can get a mobile connection, I can get an LPG. So the gateway to services. The second category of transactions are transactional, where you need to authenticate a person before they get access to something of theirs. For example, if you have a bank account and you want to withdraw money from your bank account, then you need to authenticate yourself. And therefore, we have designed something working with the banking system called a micro ATM, which allows a person to withdraw cash from a remote location. So he goes into a grocery store or a Anganwadi worker in a village and authenticates and asks the agent to give his own money from his bank account, and after verifying his identity, we can debit his bank account and credit the BC's account and give money to him. So creating a sort of an ATM everywhere. This is an example of a transactional authentication. Similarly, in the PDS system where I'm supposed to get my rice or wheat, I can go authenticate and then I get my rice at 2 rupees or whatever is the scheme. So the second class of applications of the UID is for transactional applications. The third category of applications is for your digital portable assets. So as we build online profiles of ourselves, so we want to build a credit history so that we can get access to credit. Or we want to make sure we have our health records secure on the cloud somewhere. Or we want to have our skill registry which keeps a record of our skills. Or we want to have a degree history where we want to keep all our digital degrees. All these are essentially classes of digital assets that we have. You can create a portable architecture where I can, think of it as a Dropbox for your things, where I can keep my records with a safe service provider. It's encrypted under my lock and key. And wherever I need to release it to somebody, I can authorize using the UID authentication. I can authorize the release of the data again in a secure manner to that party. For example, if I create an electronic health record system on the cloud, and I've got my health records out there, when I go to visit a doctor, I can say, okay, now I'm going to this doctor for this particular treatment. Now I authorize that depository of health records to release to that doctor my health records for that particular ailment. Similarly, if I want to go to get a loan in a bank, I can go to the loan and say I want to get a loan. I can authorize the credit bureau to release my credit records to the bank to get a loan. Or I go to an employer, and the employer says, how do I know you actually have a degree from IIM Bangalore? He just has to unlock that and send the record, and all that happens. So basically, you can create classes of digital assets, credit histories, or health records or skill records or educational records. The sky's the limit in terms of app. I mean, you could have an app which basically has all your financial assets, all your bank accounts, all your insurance policies, all your assets, stocks and all that, and you do a change of address. You move from Delhi to Bangalore, you can authorize this system to then do a KYC modification to all your financial assets. I'm saying the sky's the limit in terms of apps that can be designed. So fundamentally, you have a class of applications that you can do for KYC, a class of applications that you can do for transactions, you can a class of applications you can do for digital portable assets, and then of course you can also use it as an additional authentication factor in e-commerce and m-commerce. You're doing mobile commerce, you need to do verification. You're doing e-commerce on a website, you're buying something, you need to verify. So all kinds of things that will open up. So we expect to see a very thriving ecosystem of applications that emerges on that. Now the first application that we are rolling out with the government is the financial transactions. So the government has decided to do electronic cash or electronic benefit transfer into people's bank accounts. So we've built a system working with our partners like the National Payment Corporation, where we can attach to an ID bank account. And you can think of that as a financial address. So tomorrow when the government wants to send money to a pensioner, instead of saying, get me his bank account and I'll put that and all that, all they need to know is Aadhaar number, which anyway they're going to use to deduplicate the database. And then they can just say, send 1,000 rupees to Aadhaar number 123, and electronically it gets credited to the bank account. So this serves multiple purposes. First, the Aadhaar is used to deduplicate. For example, if there are 10,000 beneficiaries of a program, once you have everybody's Aadhaar number, automatically it removes ghosts and duplicates. And we're already seeing enough evidence in wherever it's used that there's anywhere from a 10 to 30% reduction in the beneficiary wastage. So using that same number, we can credit his account, then we can use the eKYC to open his account, and we can use the micro ATM to authenticate him when he withdraws money from the account. So fundamentally, you can create a low-cost financial infrastructure with this that sits on top of the existing payment and settlement system. So that's what we're launching now. And one of the big applications of that is for LPG subsidies, and we launched that, the Petroleum Ministry launched that on June 1st, and they've already done 1 million transactions of credits of money to people's accounts. So this will be used for a variety of benefit transfers, whether it's scholarships, pensions, LPG subsidies. So the whole set of reforms of public delivery which happens using this. Then let me come to the last one point, which is how this helps in changing the equation between the individual and the service provider, which is really a source. Now today what is happening in India, and it's probably true in other parts of the world, is that markets give choice to the middle class, people who have purchasing power, right? So, those of you who were around before liberalization, you could only buy, one car, two makers of car, you could only fly on one airline, you could only do this and all that. And obviously, it was difficult because you had no choice, you had monopolistic service providers. And then what liberalization did was create choice for you. So instead of now only going to one public company for a phone, you can, you have 10 mobile companies coming to you to sell. So the bargaining power has shifted from the service provider to the individual. So it's become a competitive market. Now, unfortunately, in public services, there's no competition because a person can only go to one location to get his service. So for example, if you are a member of the public distribution system, your name is there in one shop in one village, you can only go to that shop in that village to get your rice. Or if your record is in the healthcare system, you can only go to one public health center in your village to get your service. So fundamentally, you're locked into one point. What this whole thing does is that it liberates the whole thing by putting the identity on the cloud and then linking the service to the identity. Essentially, wherever you can go in the country to do, wherever the world actually, you can go to verify identity, your service can go there. So for example, if you look at our direct cash transfer, once we hope to have 500,000 to 1 million of these micro ATMs around the country in the coming years, you as a customer can go to any one of those locations to withdraw your money. But two things happen with that, many things, but one of them is usually convenience. You can withdraw money in your village, next day you come to the city, you can withdraw money in the city, just like you can go to any ATM in the country and withdraw your money. But the more important thing is that it eliminates the bargaining power of the service provider. Because if a particular service provider gives me poor service, I just go to somebody else. Exactly the same way you operate in the market. So I think fundamentally changing the balance of power between the service provisioning and the individual is really at the heart of empowerment. So one of the big things that we see happening, and we'll see that now in the financial services side, is that people will get money into their bank accounts and they'll get an SMS on their phone saying their money has come, and they can walk in anywhere and withdraw their money. And that changes the whole, the relationship between state and the individual. And to us, that empowerment, beyond just the ID empowerment, is very, very critical part of this. So I think, therefore, I think, you have to think of this as a platform, as a long-term, strategy to fundamentally reinvent the way public service delivery is done. Obviously, it's a very large project. We have had lots of challenges on this project. We have backlogs of enrollment because we have more packets than we can process. We have backlogs of letter delivery because we can't handle so many letters. So we have had lots of challenges in the project. But fundamentally, notwithstanding those challenges, it's absolutely on the right track. And we do believe that it will have a major impact in the coming years. Thank you very much.
Okay, so he would take questions. What I request is, A, please identify yourself, ID, and B, keep the questions short. Okay, so I saw a hand here first. This one. So my name is Darren.
Name is?
Darren.
Darren. Yes, Darren.
So my question is related to the security that we have.
So my question is basically related to the, how are we tackling the security of the individual? Like if you see the issue on the Facebook that arises out of security, even when you authenticate, they're giving the applications access to the user's data. So how are we limiting that access and how are we basically protecting the security of the individual?
Yeah, except when it's resident authorized. For example, there are only two uses of it, authentication and KYC. Authentication is when you go somewhere and say, I am X, my number is 123. And the system takes some attribute, sends it to our server, and the reply you get is a yes or a no. So data about you is not shared, it's just a yes or no. The only time data is shared when you again authenticate and say, I authorize UID to release my KYC to the bank or whatever it is. So there's no random movement of data. It's happening only when a resident participates in a transaction and authorizes data which is shared. That's point number one. Point number two is that this system is not open to the internet or something. This system actually has a ring of what we call as authentication service agencies, who in turn have authentication user agencies. So let's say in a financial transaction, the authentication service agency is NPCI or Visa or MasterCard, and the authentication user agency is a bank, SBI or ICICI Bank. And the customer is going to a registered device of the bank to do the withdrawal. So it's really 3 hops before it comes to us. So there's a whole host of things. We don't really expose our data to the world. There are lots of rings of, concentric rings of security. And then there are a lot of other things to address man-in-the-middle encryption. And plus we have a big fraud analytics group to look at fraud. We also have a model where every time you authenticate, you get an SMS on your phone, which is like when you do a credit card transaction. There's a whole host of things I don't want to get in here to address these kind of concerns.
Yes. Yeah. Sir, I just want to know the procedure by which you accredit your agencies and how do you ensure that they don't misuse the data which they have access to?
Well, we have an empanelment process and obviously we keep tabs on them. But anyway, they don't have access to the data because what happens is when you enroll, the packet is signed in memory and encrypted on the disk. So even if an enrollment agency gets that, they can't figure it out. It's complete, it's end-to-end encryption from the point of enrollment. It's actually encrypted in memory. It's not even written and then encrypted. So there's a lot of stuff to prevent people in the middle, including enrollment agencies, having access to your data.
The government gets a lot of centralized monitoring power, which certain people fear as an intrusion on their privacy. What is your take on that?
Monitoring power that it gets. One is that it has your biometrics. But what we do is the biometrics is not used except for enrollment, duplication and authentication. Second, whenever you authenticate, okay, the system knows where you are. But that's about it. Your mobile phone is far more dangerous. Your mobile phone knows exactly where you are. Your mobile phone, somebody is able to listen to your conversation. The mobile phone triangulates your GPS. So it is designed, in fact, to be very secure and very limited usage. And it is designed to be a federated architecture. In other words, when the UID is used, say, in a banking application, what banking transaction happened is only known to the banking system, not to the UID system. Similarly, if you use a UID to authenticate to access a medical record, the medical information is only known to the medical system, not to the UID system. So it's not like one database with lots of data. It's only an ID database which is used in different transactions. So that's the cleanest, best way you can really create privacy management, by creating a federated architecture. But unless there's collusion among everybody, you really will not be able to concatenate your activities. So all we know is that you went into a bank and authenticated. What you did.
You mentioned there is a segment which traditionally they don't have any ID. So what would be the motivation for them to get an Aadhaar card? Or in other words, how do we ensure everyone actually gets an Aadhaar card eventually? Secondly, once you have the Aadhaar card and say if you move, your address changes, what is the motivation on the part of end user to actually go and update his data? In other words, how do we ensure the data behind the system is actually not stale but accurate?
No, not ensuring anything. You want an ID because you can get a bank account faster, or you can get access to your money, or you want to. So it's all convenience driven. The ID gives you access, it gives you benefits. So you go and get an ID for the same reason you buy a car, because it gives you convenience, it gives you access, it gives you stuff like that. That's point number one. For the same reason, it's in your interest to keep it updated. Because if you don't keep the address updated, then when you go to open a bank account, then you will not be able to open a bank account because the address will be different. So it is in your interest. Of course, there's not much data to keep updated. Your name, hopefully, is not changing unless you have some numerological issue and you want to add an additional age or name, like some of these people do, actresses and all that. Or sex should not be changing. Your date of birth should not be changing.
Just the address.
Only address. Right? So there is a whole network of update locations where you can go and update your address. And it's in your interest to keep your address up to date, because if this becomes your root address ID for all your other documents, you're better off going and keeping this up to date and then saying use this and use it everywhere, then go everywhere and change it. So everything here is driven from what's good for you. This is not a system where we are trying to collect your data. This is a system to empower you to use it in a way that is most effective. Got it?
Sir, illegal immigrants.
Told you it's not a citizenship system.
So, but you are still linking, so many benefits to the whole
No,
Aadhaar card.
see, the Aadhaar number is only a proof of identity. It only says that X is X. But whether X is a citizen or not is established by some other authority. Having possession of the Aadhaar is not proof of citizenship. It is still the responsibility of every service provider to apply the rules of his service before they deliver that service. All we are giving you is an ID system.
Okay.
Hello, sir. Sir, I'm Priyanka here.
Yeah.
This is a wonderful system considering the fast-changing needs of today's economy. I would like to pose 3 quick questions. One is, how do you compare this to the social security system in the United States? And second, I see that the rural people might derive more benefits from this than the urban. Is it true? Then the third point is, I think the needs or the benefits of the system can be extended to solving legal cases, or probably in defense situations, to identify terrorists and all that. So what do you think about that?
The US system was designed in 1936. The US passed the Social Security Act in Roosevelt's time in 1936. So it was designed with the technology of the day. So since we're building a system now, we can build it very differently. We can create an online ID, we can create online verification, we can use all kinds of things. So those attributes are not there in the SSN. So you can think of it as a today's world implementation of an ID system. Sure, our goal, the purpose of this initially is to improve the quality of public service delivery for the people in India who are left out. So it's driven by an inclusive agenda. And therefore, our focus is not so much on the apps for the well-to-do, but really the apps for the people who need the apps, like they need to open a bank account and they need access to the PDS, so those kind of things. However, because it's an open platform, and we expect people to build apps in the future which are of use to every class of residents of India. So that those apps will emerge over time, and then there'll be a reason for everyone to have it. So that's to us is a future use of that. From a government perspective, our challenge is how do we ensure everybody in the country has an ID? How do we ensure they have bank accounts? How do we make sure money goes into the bank account? So it's really driven by a development agenda. But for example, one of the discussions we are having, it's a very preliminary discussion, is some of the embassies have said, we can use this to simplify visa processing. Suddenly everybody will go, standing in to go to that MBA or PhD will say, oh, good, this guy will get a visa faster. So those apps will emerge in the future, but we are not going to, for us the strategic goal is really inclusion and empowerment of India's, marginalized people. On the third point, it's not really designed for forensic purposes, it's really designed as an ID system. The only reason we had to use the biometrics was for deduplication. We had no other way of doing it. So the law provides, under certain conditions, access to, security or law officials with due process. So it's only under those conditions they can access, which is true everywhere in the world, by the way.
I think we'll be able to take about 2 more questions. So we'll start.
I just want to ask a personal question. I don't know whether you lie awake at night worrying sometimes, but my question is, if you did, or if you didn't, what are your key challenges in your opinion? What are the difficult things over the next year or two that worry you and that still need resolution to try to develop this system further?
Sure, I remember when President Reagan was asked about the size of the budget deficit, it's big enough to, it's too big to worry about, or it's big enough not to worry about kind of thing. So it's all such a big problem that I can't worry too much about it. So, it's big enough to take care of itself, let's put that. So I think certainly there are a lot of challenges. Right now our goal is to execute well, enroll 1 million people a day, generate the numbers, print the letters. Just the sheer logistics and supply chain complexity is massive. So that's what we are grappling with and making sure that we give the right level of customer service, because we do have backlogs. Then we have our law is with Parliament, so the law has to happen. We have to essentially make this sustainable. We also have to make sure that it's irreversible, so that it sort of stands the test of time. So there are a number of those kind of things that we are worrying about right now. I think the fundamental, when we began, the question was, is this doable? Can you do this on 1 billion people? And those are the things that were. So I think we have cracked that. Now we know we have a linear architecture that can scale up to 1 billion. So a lot of the technology challenges that were there have sort of been cracked. And similarly, the business model, how to create an enrollment system, all that has been sorted out. So a lot of that early progress has happened, but now it's about sustenance, sustainability, it's about irreversibility, it's about, putting it on a proper foundation so that it doesn't get it's stable. I know that I've made myself. I don't want to talk too much because this guy sitting there and I'll say something, I'll put some headline out there in tomorrow's Times of India.
Good afternoon.
There's been a lot of press coverage regarding the duplication of the effort between UIDAI and NPR. My question is NPR doing the same thing or not, and what is your view on that?
No, the NPR UID issue was sorted out more than a year back, January 27, 2012, where it was agreed that the UID would enroll 600 million people using various partners, and the NPR would enroll the balance in the states where they were going to be doing the work, like Tamil Nadu, Orissa, West Bengal, Bihar, Uttar Pradesh. in any case, the back end of NPR is an Aadhaar generation. So it's just that the enrollment changes. So if you're enrolling in Bangalore, you may go to an enrollment center somewhere and enroll, in one of these auditoriums or wherever, or a bank. In those states where NPR is the sole enrolling agency, you enroll only through NPR. But in either case, the packet that comes to us is the same. The Aadhaar generation is the same. So the backend is the same. So there's no duplication. And if you've already got your Aadhaar number through a non-NPR route and go for NPR, then you don't give your biometrics again. You just say that you already have an Aadhaar number. So the Aadhaar number duplication is avoided.
Okay, I think we'll take one more question. You already have.
Hello, this is Sonali Datta. Do not have permanent homes and homeless people basically. And address is one of the fields for this Aadhaar. So how are those issues being tackled?
Well, we have, the address, a lot of flexibility. You can say your address is next to the flyover and stuff like that. And we also have a specific program for homeless. So we work with government and NGOs where we give homeless people an address, care of a homeless shelter or an NGO. And we send a letter to that address and then they collect it from there. So a lot of work. In fact, one of the big byproducts is we have really cleaned up the address database system for the country.
Right, are you okay with it?
Yeah, couple more.
Couple more, okay.
I have a question for you. You said that for biometric uniqueness of a person, you had taken iris and fingerprints of all fingers
And photographs.
and the photograph. And at the service center, you have only maybe a fingerprint. Do you have all this at the service center?
You mean at the point of authentication?
At the point of authentication?
You're doing a comparison of your enrollment data with everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So it's, let's say there are 300 million people you enroll. We compare your data against all 300 million on all attributes. That's a heavy-duty compute transaction. So that is done once in batch to issue a number.
Yeah.
When you go to authenticate, you're claiming to be X.
Yes.
So you're going to say, I'm X, my number is 123, here's my biometrics.
Yes.
So only I have to do a 1:1 comparison of that attribute with your attribute.
So what will be that attribute? Will it be just a fingerprint?
No, I told you, right? If you give your fingerprint, then we'll compare your fingerprint against the 10 fingerprints we have of X in our database.
Now, since you did this much.
So the authentication is a lightweight 1:1 transaction. Enrollment is a heavy compute 1:n search.
You took such as risk, when you did this, risk analysis, you took so many different parameters. Did you actually find that, some of these parameters are same? And what is your plan to mitigate that risk?
No, now we have sufficient proof. You can go to we have done a biometric and deduplication test over 84 million records. And that report is on our website. So we're comfortable that we have accuracy of 0.01%. I mean, up to 0.1001%.
You never found a place where all the fingerprints were same or only one fingerprint was same?
No. See, the thing is, it's not about being same. It's about the system not catching it. Because it's a pattern recognition kind of thing. So it's really based on the confidence factor and all that. So there's concept of false accepts, where you accept somebody, or there's a false reject, where you reject somebody even though it's not a duplicate. So this is more pattern recognition rather than exact things. So knowing what we know now, we believe that we have accuracy of 99.99% on enrollment deduplication. And we have enough data now to substantiate that statement.
Sir, my name is Vishwanath Viliappa. My question is there a need for, re-authenticating the Aadhaar ID in the lifetime of an individual? For example, let's say somebody gets an ID at the age of 4 or 5.
Yeah. Well, yes, absolutely. First of all, iris enrollment stability comes only at the age of 5. Fingerprint stability comes only at the age of 15. So if you enroll as an infant, you have to give your iris at the age of 5 and then your fingerprint at the age of 15. So that's one requirement. Second thing is that we believe at this point that iris is for lifetime. We don't need to re-enroll that. But fingerprints, we may need to re-enroll every 5-10 years. We haven't really decided what is that frequency yet because we don't have enough data at the moment. Photograph, we may also do re-photograph.
Sir, thank you for your wonderful talk.
Yes, sir, yeah.
Here. I'm Raghavendra Rao from President Obama keeps saying that And my question is actually one question but three parts. So you've never spoken about the cost of the project or the cost per person of the project, and is there any sense of recovery of the cost at any point in time?
Three parts is there, no?
Those are the 3 parts.
Oh, we all one part, okay. The cost of the project, it costs us between 100 to 150 rupees per person. Our enrollment, our front-end enrollment cost is about 40 to 50 rupees, which is the cost we pay for the cost of you going somewhere and giving a biometrics. Our letter costs 22 rupees, and technology costs us something. So ballpark 100 to 150 rupees a person, or $2 to $3 per person. So on 1.2 billion people, it will cost maybe $3 to $4 billion. The NIPFP has done a study, which is on our website, you're welcome to have a look at it, which shows that just the application of the UID in 2 major programs of the government, NREGA and PDS, itself pays for it. Pays for it. Because what's happening today is that the government spends maybe $60 billion a year, 300,000 crores or more, on various benefit programs. LPG subsidy alone, which many people in this room are getting, 140 million consumers in India get an LPG subsidy at the rate of about 400 rupees a cylinder for 9 cylinders per year. So LPG subsidy alone is maybe 40,000 crores or $8 billion. PDS is maybe $80,000. Fertilizer is $80,000. NREGA wages is about 32,000 crores or $6 billion. So we're talking about serious amount of money which are spent on social programs. We know that in these social programs, there's enough independent studies and reports to show that there is fair amount of diversion and wastage, 10%, 20%. So on an annual spend of, let's say, $60 billion, even if you get a 10% productivity improvement by these efficiencies, that's $6 billion. The lifetime cost of this project is about $4 billion, right? So it pays for itself. Just the efficiency of eliminating ghosts and duplicates in our public delivery. Apart from all the other benefits of social inclusion, there's that. The ROI is very, very good. Did it answer all your 3 parts?
Sir, part 4 here. Part 4 here. Voting and election process is carried out in India.
Well, there are 2 parts to this. It can be used, for example, to if you had a voter ID system online kind of thing, then it could help in mobility. You migrate somewhere, you just go and say, okay, now I moved to this thing, and you can. So today, mobility is a challenge if you have moved around, so you have to go and re-enroll. So I think there's a huge convenience factor on mobility of your vote. It's also a way of when you go to vote, it can be used to verify that they're all genuine voters. So that's the second part. Using it to actually vote is a little more contentious, because by definition a vote is an anonymous thing. Therefore, if you do online voting, then technology can figure out who's doing the voting, and therefore that's not what you want. So a lot of work going on in the West on electronic voting and how to anonymize it. So once you get that anonymization right, so where I can vote online with anonymization, then yes, you could also use it for electronic voting. But maybe that's all way down.
This is sort of to relate the students in the forum. This is basically the mandate of this forum is to build up an academic sort of a body of knowledge about adoption, diffusion, and implementation. So, considering that you have now rolled out such a large-scale project relatively successfully, what would you just reflect 1 or 2 principles or something which could be transferable to other kind of projects? And similarly, I mean, this is a hypothetical question. Probably if you were to start, to take the same question forward, if you were to start the UID project all over again, what would you have done differently?
Yeah. No, I think our execution, we could have done a lot better on supply chain management, making sure that enrollment, letter, all that whole thing, because the scale of it is something which nobody's done it, so we had to learn a lot, and we did make some errors on the way. In terms of learnings, I mean, I think one principle I would go for is a simple, minimalistic, non-threatening design. Because what happens in systems is, you get ambitious and oh, we'll do this, we'll do that, we'll do all these things, and then it sort of crumbles under the weight of its complexity. So having a very minimalistic design, very simple. We do very simple, we collect very simple information. We only enroll and do authentication and eKYC. That's it. So our services are very, very simple. Because I think, in public systems especially, I think giving a small delta benefit to 1 billion people is much more socially and economically valuable than giving complex benefits to a few people. So it's better to build a simple system that scales rapidly so that more people benefit, and then try to make some very complex. Well, in the private sector, it's different. If I'm running a company and I got 50 million customers, I keep trying to make more sophisticated products and services for them. Whereas here in public system, it's not that. It's about making sure everybody is on the platform. So simplify it in a way that you can scale it out rapidly, as opposed to making it complex. The other benefit of simplicity is that it reduces potential opponents to what you're doing. Because in a competitive turf situation, you need to sort of keep it low and limited. That's point number one. Another big lesson is that you need to create a set of allies for whatever you're doing. So if you look at the whole ID system we have built, we have an ecosystem, so we have partners who have a stake in its success, banks need it to succeed, the oil companies need it, the fertilizer companies need it, the telecom companies need it, the state governments need it to improve efficiency. So you need to create a strong coalition of allies who have a stake in its success. Because there are bound to be people who will oppose it anyway, that's a given. So you can't change the fact that there will be opposition, but the only thing you can change is you can create a countervailing coalition of equally interested and powerful players who sort of take on the coalition of the people who want it to fail. So that's the second lesson. And it's not new fund. Machiavelli wrote about it in the 16th century, so it's not a new concept that you create a coalition for change. And I think third thing is create choice and empowerment in every part of it. For example, enrollment. The reason why we have multiple partners is precisely that you as an enrollee can go anywhere. So you should be able to, in theory, go to a post office, a bank, or the state government. So nobody should have a monopoly on enrollment, because that again creates problems, or it creates challenges. So there are more strategic issues rather than technology issues.
So, to know how do you recruit? So if I want to join and I am fascinated by the kind of work that how do you recruit?
I hope you're ready for a pay cut. Why don't you just write to me, email me, give my email ID. No, because at this point, I need to be clear about what you do, and then I'll see if there's a, because our team is very small, 280 guys, very tight. What's your background?
I am from IT. I'm a PI. I've worked on intelligence.
We can look at analytics and all that.
Good afternoon, sir.
You about it, huh? No. Okay. Thank you. Hope you like that. Yes, thank you. Thank you. Privacy issue is
Just the conference people.
And it will become headlines. That's how it comes. Roll numbers next week.
Oh, really?
No, see, the thing is, see, embassy is a class of problems like anything else where verification of identity is very difficult to find. So embassies spend a lot of time verifying real identity and all. So if you can, Aadhaar helps to streamline that, it's good for them. I just get an example, they're saying, what are the applications for the, middle class? And I said, all kinds of apps will emerge that will make you want to have this number, it will help you in some way.
Nandan, we want a photo with
So you'll say embassy something, that's
It is almost the same thing.
how are you? Yeah, of course. I mean, I don't know your name, but you look very familiar. Yeah, so tall. I had actually doing some fun. Hi, work for you in the past. Huh? Work for you. I know. See that. Alabama.
Yes, I was a clue. How do you protect that this is the same person? So I mean, he's doing the biometric. I mean, but that person.
Give, it's a question and it's up to the people to take it. So and now, but